Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. On behalf of my colleagues, Senator Clear and Senator Prasad, and our Assemblymember Ron Kim here, and our other elected officials, I'm delighted, and also Tai Wang, the founder and innovator of this great cultural and community space. I welcome you to Flushing. It's a good day. It's a great day because we have somebody who absolutely needs no introduction from anybody, certainly not me, to Flushing, and is no stranger to Flushing. She is a champion all over the country for New York causes and what we need as New Yorkers. Not afraid to, go to the powers that be and say and demand what we need for New York. And of course, always understanding what's on the ground in our communities, what we need. It is my immense privilege to introduce our governor, the Honorable Kathy Hochul.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Senator Liu, for welcoming us to your amazing district. I have been here so many times. My good friends, I see Peter too, and so many others, welcoming you here once again. Thank you to the Glow Community Center. I want to thank our leader and also Tai to the great work you do here, and thank you and commend you for everything you're doing to better the lives of Flushing residents. We also have our partners in government here. Always welcome to see my friends out of session. More enjoyable sometimes for most of us. You're back in the district and in communities that we cherish. And so I want to give a shout out to our Senator Cordell Clear, who's joined us as well, Senator. Let's give her another round of applause. Councilmember Sandra Ung has joined us. Thank you, Sandra. Great to see you. We also have in our speaking program Senator Prasad. I want to thank her for joining us as well. Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal has joined us as well. Let's give her another round of applause. Liz Roberts has joined us. Let's get Liz a round of applause. She'll be speaking in a couple minutes. Assemblymember Ron Kim has joined us. Let's give a shout out to him. So, if I missed any elected officials, well, I know one. The district attorney is here too. I am not going to miss the district attorney. Melinda Katz, and she's someone who works deeply in the issue that we're addressing here today because the prosecutions of these crimes go through her office, and I want to commend her a special shout out for the work that she has done to let people know, not just in Queens, but all over the state of New York, we will enforce the laws and protect particularly the young women and girls who are subjected to human trafficking, but anyone who's subjected to these heinous crimes. So Melinda Katz, thank you for making sure that all of our residents are safe. Dr. Martin Luther King once said that exploitation of man by man is one of the most degrading and dehumanizing forces in our society. With respect to Dr. King, I'd like to add that the exploitation of women can even be more egregious. And I'm here to talk about one of the most enduring forms through history, truly, forms of that exploitation that's happening right here in New York State. Talk about human trafficking, forced labor, the buying and selling of people, literally. So let's just call it out what it is. And places like Queens and in this Flushing community itself know about this all too well. The neighborhood we're in today is one of the most highly trafficked, and that's not a good thing. When you talk about human trafficking, it's the epicenter of trafficking for the entire country. Victims are often trafficked from impoverished countries. They have no hope. They think there's at least a chance of a better life. Or they're threatened with violence to themselves or their family members, their loved ones. They're lured with false promises of better jobs and benefits like green cards. And even in our own country, you get teenage girls lured on social media to meet someone at a local coffee shop or a suburban mall. So there's social media predators going after our children, young people. And so it's a real crisis. And it's actually, this has infiltrated a large number of modern industries like agriculture and construction, food service, domestic work, and of course the illicit sex trade. And while circumstances definitely vary from case to case, what's consistent is the deeply harmful effect it has on the victims. These people lose control of their lives. They have no say. And these, as I mentioned, the most vulnerable victims are the girls and women, racial and ethnic minorities, often LGBTQ members, and of course migrants. Traffickers use a large variety of tactics to assert and maintain control over their victims, create fear and dependence on them, and often helps and stops people from leaving their circumstances, even if there's an offer of help. We were just talking about this before we came out, that there's cases where people are offered to get out of the circumstance, but they're very cognizant there's someone still out there pulling the strings. And the fear is so ingrained in them, they can't just walk away. It's truly, truly a travesty. And so it really has become a form of slavery, people in bondage to others, going on here in New York and in communities like this. That's the reality check that's facing us right now. We can't ignore this. We can't turn our heads and say, no, that's happening. Human trafficking that happens elsewhere. It's happening in our midst. And there are people among us who are victimized. So think of the different circumstances when a man is forced to work with little or no pay, physically harmed if he tries to escape. That's just modern day slavery. When a teenage girl is lured away with promises, something else, a better life, and it becomes literally imprisoned and traded out, that's slavery. Or if a person's locked in a sweatshop, a woman can't leave as a domestic worker, that's another form of slavery. So this has many, many manifestations. You can't just say this is the prototypical case of human trafficking because it is so diverse. And it's really a sinister crime that happens in the dark underworld. Rarely is the light of day shined upon it. And the victims are betrayed by criminals who don't treat them like human beings. They see them as a commodity to exploit and make money off of. And so that's why my administration is standing up. And I thank people like Kelly Owens and others, a part of our great team, for what they're doing. And Barbara Gwynn, the Office of Temporary and Disability Services, and Jeanette Moy, and all these other great people for what they do every day. They're focused on this. And we've established an interagency child labor task force because slavery of our children is happening today. We launched a multifaceted public education campaign to raise awareness about this, about trafficking and workers' rights when the line is crossed. We have a dedicated anti-trafficking unit within the Department of Labor because this happens so often in workplaces, and it reinforces our commitment to eradicate this crime. And we've signed critical legislation to provide support and resources to victims while ensuring that this crime is exposed for all to see. But today I'm here to stand here and tell you about some new initiatives to fight human trafficking. First, we're investing $2.3 million in our response to human trafficking program, supporting 11 service providers throughout the state for case management and victim services. So first of all, they need some money. Let's give them some more money. And these are tailored to the needs of each individual victim. There's not a one-size-fits-all. They can help long-term assistance, short-term assistance, housing, medical, just getting them a job. But I think counseling is so important. I remember when my mother was a social worker, we set up a home for victims of domestic violence. And these women, many of them had just felt captive in a relationship that should have been loving. I mean, a different dynamic, but a loving relationship. And when someone in that situation looks at you, you can see in their eyes what they've been through, that they don't feel that they're worthy anymore. And they need counseling to make them know that they have value. They're a human being, just like the rest of us. And so there has to be intensive therapy and counseling to bring them back. And that's another reason we want to invest money into these services. So we'll continue to do that. But again, these legislators who are here today, who help bring forth bills, that's another avenue. We can put money, we can have program in the administration, but to have partners in the legislature who understand the power that they have to affect change is what we're here to talk about here today. So I want to thank them as well. The sponsors of the bills, I'm going to give a shout out again, but they are also working every day in their respective committees to figure out how we can help stop the traffickers and help the victims. So again, Senator Prasad, I want to thank her for her support, her legislation, Cordell Clear, Senator Leah Webb as well, Assembly Member Grace Lee, Linda Rosenthal, and Amy Paulin are all the sponsors of the bills that I'll be signing momentarily. And the first bill extends the state's Interagency Task Force on Human Trafficking another 4 years because it was set to expire. So we know that that's working. Let's keep that going so that continues uninterrupted. It also adds a new member, the Department of State, that oversees the Office of New Americans. When you think about the fact that this is an office that welcomes immigrants, it makes sense that they'd actually have a role in this interagency task force as well because they can offer services to people. And so many victims are immigrants. They've been trafficked. They've come from elsewhere. And now we have a vulnerable population, our newly arrived migrants who've come up, who are now living among us, who are very, very vulnerable to this exploitation. This second bill also calls on our task force to investigate the connection between social media and trafficking. My gosh. I mean, even within my own family, seeing young family members, young teenage girls preyed upon. And thank God the family was smart enough to stop it, but a lot of families don't know what's going on. When your kids are spending a lot of time alone, and you think they're studying or talking to their friends, and they're responding to someone who's pretending they're a friend, giving them that sense of security, and I can talk to this person, relate to them, and all of a sudden it's like, well, let's go meet at the mall, let's go meet at the local shop, let's meet at the library. And these kids don't know any better. They're just children. And these predators are so savvy. They absolutely can convince someone that they're just another young person who's interested, or someone in their school maybe. It's a whole web of lies and distortion and betrayal, but so many kids are wrapped up in this and get caught up. And there are enough cases we never see these children again. Utterly heartbreaking. So we will make those connections, we'll see those connections and help people understand the vulnerability and exposure of our children because they're increasingly using technology to exploit victims, and it's just, social media has become a great tool in their arsenal. And it's also where they can identify and groom victims. So that's another area. But we're not going to just let them do this. We're going to continue to help with our homegrown strategies and hopefully prevent people from falling victim in the future. The remaining bills talk about critical information that should be available in public places. I mean, sometimes you see this, but a lot of times you don't. Public restrooms, lactation rooms, MTA and Port Authority stations and facilities, commercial airports. We have a lot of hotels near the airports. I was just talking to the district attorney about this. A lot of illicit activities going on in those hotels near our airports when people are coming in or being brought in. And at truck stops, and at New York State Thruway rest stops. You can see that some of what we're trying to talk about behind me. You'll now start seeing these in these very public spaces, transit centers, where people nationally and internationally are coming from. And sometimes a restroom is the only safe place someone can call from if they're trying to escape an individual, and the phone number is right there. Imagine that. That could be the difference between a life in bondage or freedom. That phone number that they can see, now prominently available because of the legislation I'm signing here today. So here in New York, we have no tolerance for this. We're going to continue to break this cycle of suffering so victims can change from victims into survivors. That's what we have to do. That is our goal here. So they can tell their stories. They can go out with confidence and courage, and maybe their voices can help stop someone else from falling into the same trap that they did. Everyone has a right to be free from fear, and they deserve to have that freedom. So I have such belief in the power of New Yorkers when we do band together. Together we can solve this. Together by calling this out, adopting the legislation that I'll be signing momentarily to talk about different ways we can attack this problem, I believe that we can be the state that truly makes a profound difference and stops the crime of trafficking and lifts up and saves our victims. So that's what we're doing today. This is critically important, and I want to thank everyone who helped make this happen. Again, our sponsors. And with that, I'd like to call up Cordell Clear to talk about her legislation and give us a few. Come on up. Come on up. Thank you for all you've done.
Thank you. I didn't expect to be next, but I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Governor Hochul and my legislative partners, including Amy Paulin, Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal, and in particular all the advocates and survivors who have joined us here today. My first priority upon election to the Senate was to address human trafficking. I made this pledge because of the youth, the families, the victims, and survivors that I know in my community of Harlem. One parent of a survivor is here with me today of a young teenage girl who was taken away from us too soon. But today I'm proud that we're taking a series of steps in their memory and in their names to ensure that we wipe this vile crime off the face of our city and country. I'm particularly proud to have 3 bills in this package, including 2 that will spread awareness and empower survivors, and 1 that will explore in depth the connection between social media and human trafficking and propose solutions to shut down this pipeline. I look forward to passing more legislation in 2024, including my top priority, Senate Bill 349, which would eliminate the criminal statute of limitations for sex trafficking and extend the window for survivors to file lawsuits to parallel other changes we have recently made in law. As the governor mentioned earlier, this is slavery, and it is also terrorism. People who are living in terror, in fear of their very lives. A young girl who didn't even feel safe when she was reunited with her mother, still afraid that her pimp was outside and he was going to get her if she didn't go back, if she didn't leave him. A lot of people never see these circumstances and you don't know what it is, but you see the signs of it, and it's up to us to say something. These are vulnerable people. They can't speak for themselves sometimes. Young children, predators who are watching them online at an age when we are critical of our bodies and critical of how we look and upset with our parents sometimes, mad that we can't go out because we think they're too strict. And sometimes our kids put these things on social media. And then there's somebody sitting there waiting, trolling and scrolling through. And they say, oh, I'm your friend. Yeah, your mother is a bad person. Come go with me. And our children don't know any better. But we have to fight for them. We have to continue to fight for them. And we have to speak up for them and everybody else who are victims of these crimes. So I thank you today, Governor Hochul, for signing these bills. I look forward to what it will do in our communities. And I look forward to passing more legislation and continue the fight. Thank you.
Please welcome to the podium Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal. I represent the Upper West Side and parts of Hell's Kitchen in the 67th Assembly District, and it's my pleasure to be here for this very serious cause. First, I want to thank Governor Hochul for her incredible commitment to empowering young girls, women, LGBTQIA+ individuals, immigrants, and others in both New York State and cities across the globe. Human trafficking has no boundaries, and today's package of legislation will give many vulnerable people, whether they hail from New York or were trafficked here from elsewhere, the needed tools to escape abusive and volatile situations. I'd also like to thank the advocates whose expertise and activism helped to make these bills a reality, as well as my friend and colleague, Assemblymember Amy Paulin, who's worked hard on this area, and Assemblymember Grace Lee, both of whom couldn't be here. But their dedication and the entire legislature's dedication to this issue is only bolstered by a woman governor who truly understands the depth of this issue. In the 1500s was the beginning of the slave trade. The 1800s witnessed the trafficking of Chinese women to America, and the early 1900s confronted the global trafficking of migrants, mainly of women and children. But the rise of the internet in the 1980s turned trafficking on its head. While technology has certainly given us the gift of connecting with people from across the globe in a nanosecond, it's also expanded the ability of human traffickers to target the most vulnerable in their own homes. People don't have to cross a border. They don't have to travel across an ocean to be exploited. It now takes the click of a button to traffic an individual, especially young children whose lives are online. From catfishing young adults to sending vulnerable people illegitimate job postings, to love bombing teens through direct messages, to earning the trust of kids struggling to find acceptance, predators lurk in the shadows on social media, dating sites, WhatsApp, video games, compiling information on potential victims with the sole purpose of exploiting them. The National Human Trafficking Hotline found a staggering increase in sex trafficking recruitment by 125% on Facebook and 95% on Instagram between the years of 2019 to 2020, a shocking and frightening uptick. So when New York State established its Interagency Task Force on Human Trafficking in 2007, it set out to gather data on the extent of trafficking in the state while also giving our state agencies the tools and information they need to crack down on trafficking and keep women, children, and the most vulnerable safe. The task force, which is co-chaired by Acting OTDA Commissioner Barbara Gwynn and DCJS Commissioner Rosanna Rosado, has played a pivotal role in our efforts. And working with Kelly Owens and her team and the governor's other wonderful staffers, I know that this administration has a real commitment to make our state safer, our most vulnerable taken care of. And there's a lot left to do, but we all are willing to do the work. And I'm proud to be here today. Shout out to my colleague, Assemblymember Ron Kim, and thank you all.
Please welcome to the podium the CEO of Safe Horizon, Liz Roberts.
Good afternoon. I am so pleased to be here in this incredible company and to have an opportunity to speak about human trafficking and what we see at Safe Horizon. So my name is Liz Roberts. I'm the CEO of Safe Horizon, and we are the nation's largest victim assistance organization. Every year, we offer support to 250,000 New Yorkers who have been affected by crime or abuse. Our approach is anti-racist, trauma-informed, and client-centered. And we are so grateful to all of the lawmakers here today who have fought to move the very real crisis of human trafficking out of the shadows, and especially grateful to Governor Kathy Hochul for her leadership and for signing these common sense bills into law. We offer special thanks to Assemblymember Amy Paulin, Grace Lee, Linda Rosenthal, State Senators Leah Webb, Cordell Clear, and Roxanne Persaud. Thank you so much for sponsoring these bills and for helping trafficking survivors to find paths to safety and healing. Safe Horizon's anti-trafficking program provides legal and social services to people from countries all over the world and from right here in the U.S. Who have been trafficked, both victims of labor and sex trafficking. Last year, that program helped 300 survivors. We also see trafficking survivors, unfortunately, in many of our other programs, in our domestic violence shelters, in our child advocacy centers, in our street work program for homeless young people. And so we recognize that trafficking intersects with many different kinds of violence and abuse, and that folks who are vulnerable because of poverty, because of a trauma history, because of not having immigration status, can turn up in many different places to seek help. We know from our work over 4 decades, and the governor spoke to this so clearly, that traffickers are very, very effective at isolating their victims from those who might be able to help them, whether that is family, friends, and community, or service providers, law enforcement, and other resources. And as I was reading these bills and preparing for this conversation, I was thinking about a couple that we worked with recently. They came to the United States from the Philippines based on a promise of steady work and a hope for a better life. When they got here, they were forced into labor with little or no pay. They became homeless as a result and sometimes slept in their truck or in a storage unit. A nonprofit organization provided them with a list of resources, and they saw the word safe, Safe Horizon, and they called the phone number next to those words. We were able to provide them with legal advocacy, counseling, social services, help them find a safe place to live. And Norman and Loida, thank goodness, are now living safely in New York City, and they are working for fair wages. Their story shows just how powerful it is to get information into the places where trafficking survivors might be, to get that information out everywhere, to make sure that our communities, our neighbors, understand how prevalent trafficking is and understand how to connect a survivor to help. So on behalf of everyone at Safe Horizon, thank you again, Governor Hochul. Thank you again to all the lawmakers who helped to move these bills and who fight so hard in Albany every day, every year, on behalf of survivors. We are proud to stand with you in this struggle.
Please remain seated as we sign the bill.